Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dante Fortson here with the long awaited Gentile study, Unmasking the Gentiles Part 1, Angered by a Foolish Nation. So, for those of you who have been waiting for the study, we're going to jump into it today, finally. But first, if you have not clicked the thumbs up button yet, please click the thumbs up button. For those of you who have not yet subscribed, please click the subscribe button. And if you have subscribed and if you're subscribing right now, make sure you click the notification bell so that way you get notified whenever I put out new studies. Make sure you click all notifications. All right. For those that want to support via Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/Dante Fortson. It's only $1 to become a patron. And we're having the contest, which I'm going to talk about at the end. But the contest for the 3 mystery boxes, I'm not telling you what's inside the boxes, but patrons that are active on the forum get 15 additional points added to their score at the end of the month when I select the winners of those mystery boxes. Same thing, if you want to support via Cash App, you can do that with hashtag BHITB. The PayPal support link is in the description. And for those of you who catch the premieres, you can support in the super chat by clicking the $sign. For those of you who do not have it to support financially, a share and a prayer are always welcome. And speaking of shares, do not forget that there is another contest number 2 going on for the Esau book. I'm working on a book that is going to trace Esau. And if I get 1 million views to the channel before the book is finished and ready to publish, that's written, edited, everything. If the channel gets 1 million views before then, everybody gets the book for free. It doesn't matter how many people it is. I'm going to put out the PDF version of the book for free. You can download it for free. So like and share everything on this channel. Again, if we get 1 million views before I finish the book, everybody gets it for free. All right. So something new. Prayer request. In the forum, there are 2 prayer requests. So for those of you who have not visited the forum, you can do that at it's bhitbforums.com. bhitbforums.com. So yeah, you can go to the forums and check out the prayer request. If you want to submit a prayer request, please do it there, and I will shout it out before the next, well, not necessarily the next study, but in a future study, I will do my best to shout them out depending on how many we get, but I will do a few every study from here on out if they are there. The first one is for Anne. She wants prayer for her son Daniel's salvation. And the next one is for Ian, for his wife to come to the truth and for them to get on one accord. So please pray for those 2. And again, drop your prayer request in the BHITB forums at bhitbforums.com. All right. So today's study is brought to you by my book, Unmasking the Gentiles, the European plot to replace Israel. If you guys want a full breakdown on a lot of the stuff I'm going to cover in this study, grab Unmasking the Gentiles, and that's available on Amazon.com and I believe at Barnes & Noble. And then, of course, Undeniable, Full Color Evidence of Black Israelites in the Bible. It's no commentary or anything. It's just evidence, nothing but full color evidence. And you can let people argue with that. It's hard to argue with the evidence, easy to argue with interpretation. So make sure you grab those. That's also available at Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. All right. So for those of you who have not been to one of my studies, this is just a warning. It's not going to be any of this stuff that's on the warning in here. Even though all this stuff is in the Bible right there underneath the rated R, all that's in the Bible. Point being, this is not going to be the typical Gentile study. We're going to dig deep into the subject of the Gentiles. We're going to explore the Old Testament. We're going to explore the New Testament. We're going to talk about the geography. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to trace the lineages, all of that stuff through this study. And we're going to determine once and for all, what does the word Gentile mean? Does it refer to the Europeans? Does it refer to the Northern Kingdom? Does it refer to the land? Does it refer to everybody that's not an Israelite? What does it really mean? And you're going to see in part 2, when we get into the study of the word Gentile in the New Testament, there are different suffixes which kind of give the word different meanings. And I'm going to go over those as well. All right, so let's start. We're going to start in Romans chapter 10, verse 1 for a little bit of context, because I want to talk about Paul a little bit while we go through this. But Paul starts out with a purpose in mind, and Paul makes his agenda very clear in the book of Romans when you get to chapter 10. And so I do want to read from Romans 10:1-19, and we'll make a couple stops in there. But tonight's study is going to focus mainly on verse 19. So Romans chapter 10, starting at verse 1. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. So that's Paul's agenda. His prayer and desire to God is for Israel to be saved. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. And we're going to come back to that word zeal later on. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. He's talking about the law keepers. And this is where you're going to find some law keepers have a problem with Paul. But we're going to talk about the fact that Paul does not contradict anything that's in the Old Testament or the New Testament, even though some people believe that. I'm going to put out a study. It's probably coming this week. Well, actually next week on Paul. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. For Moses describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which doeth those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise. Say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven? That is to bring Christ down from heaven, from above. Or who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring up Christ again from the dead. But what saith it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth and in thy heart. That is the word of faith which we preach. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. So Paul is preaching to an audience here. And remember, his desire is that Israel might be saved. So we're not going to talk exactly about who the audience is just yet. But Paul is preaching to an audience for the salvation of Israel. So we're verse 10. For with the heart of man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. For the scripture saith, whosoever believeth in him shall not be ashamed. So Paul is now quoting from scripture. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. So we're going to come back to those words, the difference between a Jew and a Greek soon. Not necessarily in a word study in this part, not in part 1, but we're going to touch on the Jews in part 1, this part right here, just briefly. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And Paul's talking about Israel again. He's like, how are they going to be saved if they haven't heard about Christ? How are they going to call on Christ if they haven't heard of him? And how are they going to hear if they don't have a preacher? And how shall they preach except they be sent, as it is written? Now, we're going to take a quick pit stop right here at verse 15. Quick pit stop. And how shall they preach except they be sent? Now, this is how you tell if somebody's sent. It says, as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. So when you see people preaching, some of these guys out on the corners, not all the people do this, not all the camps do this, but when you see those guys on the corner, are they preaching the gospel of peace? Are they bringing glad tidings of good things? The gospel is the good news. Just ask yourself, is this person preaching good news, or are they preaching something other than good news? And we'll come back to that. Actually in a different study that I have ready to go out for Monday. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Esaias, or Isaiah, that's the Greek way of spelling Isaiah. For Esaias, or Isaiah, saith, Lord, who hath believed our report? So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. But I say, have they not heard? So now he's about to get into the subject of this study. Have they not heard? Yes, verily, their sound went into all the earth, and their words unto the end of the world. But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. All right, so here is where we're going to focus. But I say, did not Israel know? So Paul is saying we were warned. Israel was warned that this was going to happen. First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. So we're going to break down this verse, Romans 10:19. And so we look in the Strongs, of course, as we do. So he's going to provoke them to jealousy right here, 38:63. Provoke to jealousy. So we come over here, 38:63, Paratzelu, I believe that's how you say that. You guys know I butcher these words. To provoke to jealousy, to make jealous, provoke to jealousy, to provoke to jealously. That's interesting. Provoke to anger. If we come down here to the helps part, properly to apply heavy, hot pressure to provoke change, especially in an up close and personal way. So, to provoke change, pressure to provoke change. He's going to push us to jealousy or push us under pressure to provoke change. So why did he want to do that? Just want to be clear one more time. 38:63, 38:63. Push us, provoke us to, or he's trying to provoke change. But why did he do that? We find that in Deuteronomy 32:16. This is what Paul is referring to when he says Moses warned us that this was going to happen. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoked they him to anger. So he's mad. The Most High is mad because Israel is worshiping strange gods. All right, so he's provoked to jealousy, and he's angry because of the abominations. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. This is one of the few places you're going to find the Shed and the Sa'ir referenced in the same verse. For those of you who watched the Nephilim giant study, you will recognize the Sa'ir from part 1, or the satyrs. We have not touched on the Shed yet, or the Shidu of Assyria, in Assyrian, what they call mythology. We will cover those, but this is one of the, I think this is the only verse where you find the Shed and the Sa'ir mentioned together. So they sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. That's kind of hard to say. Of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten God that formed thee. And when the Lord saw it, he abhorred them because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be, for they are a very froward generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. So again, this is what Paul is talking about in Romans 10. He's referring to this verse in Deuteronomy 32, where he says, they move me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with the foolish nation. That's Deuteronomy 32:16 through 21 for those listening. So let's look at verse 21. We're going to put the emphasis on verse 21. So Romans 10:19 is going to be the emphasis, and Deuteronomy 32:21, since they're coinciding verses. So Paul is talking about what Moses is talking about. So we're on the same page. So now we see right here, 70:65. They're provoking him to jealousy. 70:65. Now, in the Hebrew, it is kana, to be jealous or zealous. Became envious, became jealous, been very zealous, envied, envious, jealous, jealousy, provokes to jealousy. So we see that In the Hebrew, in the Greek, we saw that it was to move you towards a specific cause. So there's a reason for this. So if we look up the word zealous, it'll tell you full of zeal. So I went ahead and just went straight to the word zeal and the definition of it. This is from the Oxford Dictionary. It says zeal, great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. So we see that the Greek and the Hebrew coincide in the language. He is trying to push us towards an objective. And we're going to see in a minute what that objective might be. So, but he's going to use this nation of people to do this. Now, we're going to talk about that word nation in a second. And again, we're going to dive deeper into that word that's used for nation in part 2. So that's going to bring us to this term nation. So real quick, without getting too far ahead into part 2, when you encounter the word ethnos in the Bible, oftentimes people will just use it as a general word. But there are different suffixes that change the meaning slightly. So, for example, you have the word ethnos, you'll have the word ethne or ethnii and ethnisen. And they all have a slightly different meaning depending on how they are used. Now, this is something that was uncovered during our iron sharpening session between myself and Teo. I'm going to show you some of the dialogue from that in part 2. Now, this was a few years back. This is, I want to say, I believe this was 2016 or 2017 that we had this conversation. So, yeah, it was a few years back. But I'm going to show you the slight variations of the word, which give you an indication of when it's referring to the people, when it's referring to the culture, and when it's referring to the land that the people inhabit. So now, it says, by them that are not a people, Romans 10:19. But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people. It's going to be a people without a culture. The word here is actually ethne, but when you go check it out in your Strong's, it's going to take you to the definition of ethnos. And you'll see that ethnos, when you go look at that, it'll give you several definitions, one of which includes a reference to culture. So it becomes more of a word that you have to look at the context of how it's being used when it's being used to apply it the right way, to apply it to the land, to apply it to the culture, or to apply it to the people. So he's going to send against us he's going to make us, provoke us to jealousy or provoke us towards a certain action by a people who do not have a culture, a cultureless people. And we see here, this is the festival of Black Pete, Swartz Piet, I believe it's called. And these are all Caucasians, Europeans, in blackface with the red lips and the afros. That's part of their culture. I use that word very loosely. Part of their culture is to appropriate part of black culture. But like he said, he's going to provoke you to jealousy with the people who have no culture. Deuteronomy 32 says the same thing. They moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people, or a people who have no culture. And we're going to see why that's important. And no, this is not Photoshop. She really wore this out on stage and performed like this for that song Honky Tonk Badonkadonk. If you've not seen the music video, you should go watch it. It's one of the earliest attempts of country music to fuse with rap, and it was quite hilarious. But yeah, this is all real. I assure you. She got out on stage just like this and danced and everything on stage. This is at an awards show. This is not like the music video. So yeah, she came out on stage like that. But anyway, he's going to provoke you to jealousy with the people who have no culture. Now think about this, just in context. We understand, we've heard the term culture vulture before. We've heard the terms cultural appropriation. Why are those terms used? Because there's a certain group of people who steals everything. They stole the land. You see, they stole North America, Canada, and, well, I guess really the whole North America, Canada and the United States. They've stolen other parts of the world, but they've stolen Israel. They stole labor. They stole people off a continent and brought them here to use as free labor. They stole language. American English is made up of so many other languages. Some of it's original, but it's made up of tons of other languages. Again, stolen culture. As you just saw, just look at the pictures. They're dressing up in blackface and afros. That's not their culture. They're walking around. This is not surgery. I don't believe it is, but they're walking around trying to look like they have big butts like black women and making country music, hip hop songs. They're trying to dress like what they perceive as black culture. They have stolen Native American land, stolen labor, stolen language, gunpowder. That's from the Chinese. Food. You ever heard of Tex-Mex? Everything is just Americanized. They just took other people's food and Americanized it, whatever that means. They added their own little spin on stuff that already existed. Inventions. We know they've stolen plenty of inventions. And history. We've all heard of the term whitewashing. What is their culture? Their culture is cultural appropriation. And again, this is just from what we're reading in the Bible, and we can observe that they're the only people that have habitually done this throughout history. Constantly stolen other cultures. What are we looking at in what they call the Middle East today? Again, they stole Israel, but they're also trying to now steal Egypt, saying that the Egyptians were tanned Caucasians. If you go to Wikipedia and look up Ethiopians, they have Ethiopians classified as Caucasoid. So basically, they're trying to whitewash all of history, to steal all of culture. Nobody is copying their culture. They're taking everybody else's culture. Yoga, where does that come from? India. But for whatever reason, it's big over here in the United States. It's because there is a group of people who are not actually a people. They have no culture. So they have to absorb or try to take culture. Think about the founding of America. America was founded by criminals. These people rebelled against their government over taxes and started a war. They were terrorists. You can say whatever you want to, but we know in this day and age, if the same thing was to happen here in America and a group of people did what they did and went to another country and started a war, they would define those people as terrorists. And then they said, you know what? Now that we're here, we got everything established. All you people from all over the place come here. So they made themselves a people on stolen land. They were not a people before. They brought this experiment together and turned themselves into a people, so to speak, loosely, by stealing multiple cultures. They were not a people. So now we understand he's going to provoke us to jealousy with the people who have no culture, who are stealing all of our culture and other people's culture. And then we get to the part of the verse where he says he's going to provoke us to anger. Now, I thought this was hilarious throughout this part of the study right here, the part about being provoked to anger. Now, not God being provoked to anger, but what he does to us, to me, is pretty funny. So Romans 10:19. But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. All right, so we got through the first half of that. I'll provoke you to jealousy by them which are no people. So he's going to try to push us towards a certain action by people who don't have a culture. And that action that we're kind of looking at right now is the awakening. Why are we trying to awaken as many people and turn back to the Most High? So we can call back the Messiah and put an end to this nonsense, to all the stuff that's going on. And that's their main problem, why they don't want us talking about it. Because otherwise it shouldn't matter if black people think we're Israel. Who cares, right? Who cares what black people think? If there's nothing to what we're saying, it shouldn't make a difference one way or the other. But they have a problem because they understand, many of them understand exactly who we are, and they don't want us to call back the Most High because then they have to start answering for what they've done. So he's going to provoke us to anger. How is he going to provoke us to anger? This says by a nation full of Romans 10:19. We're going to break this down. By a nation without understanding, I will anger you. So right here, 801, asineto, or We'll see in a second when I pull it up. Without understanding. A nation without understanding. Or a nation full of stupid people. And I know some of you are saying, well, you shouldn't call people stupid. You shouldn't call people names. Okay, I'm going to show you something real quick. Usage. This is 801. I'll go back real quick. 801. Without understanding. 801. 801. Unintelligent, without wisdom, unwise, undiscerning, implying probably a moral defect. Tell me when this sounds familiar to you, for those of you who live in America and have observed life your whole entire life. Just observe the people. Words help studies. Right here. Properly without comprehension. Foolish because incoherent. Failing to put facts together. We're going to talk about that in a second. Describes a person failing to structure information in a meaningful way and therefore unable to reach necessary conclusions. This person is illogical because unwilling to use good reason. If you go further down on that same page, remember you can go to BibleHub.com and check and fact check everything I'm doing. Thayer's Greek Lexicon. Unintelligent, without understanding, stupid. I'm not calling them stupid. Paul used the word for stupid. He's saying that God is going to anger us by a stupid nation, a nation of stupid people. Okay, so let's look at what the Hebrew says, because the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall a matter be confirmed. So Deuteronomy 32:21, they have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. All right. So in Deuteronomy 32, right here, the word foolish, 50:36, Nabal, 50:36. So we have 50:36, foolish, senseless, fool, foolish man, foolish woman, fools. If you come down here to the Brown, Driver, Briggs, foolish, senseless, especially of a man who has no perception of ethical and religious claims, and with collateral idea of ignoble, disgraceful, or ignoble means not trustworthy or not noble. So you guys can read all the rest of that part by yourself if you want to. But if you continue down the page, when you get to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, foolish, vile person, from Nabal, stupid, wicked. So again, in both the Greek and the Hebrew, the word for stupid is used. God is going to push us to anger or provoke us to anger with a nation full of stupid people. And it says they won't be able to, they have no perception of ethical and religious claims. Let's go back for a second and look at some of this. Without comprehension, foolish because they're incoherent, failing to put the facts together. All right, so understand, it's a nation full of stupid people. This is why they will read the Bible in Eurocentric Christianity, and they will tell you that Israel spent 400 years in Egypt. Now, for those of you who are Israelites and you're going to say we only spent 215, not 400, I get it. I'm talking about Eurocentric Christian doctrine right now. They will tell you that 70 Israelites went into Egypt, spent 400 years in Egypt, which is in Africa, by the way, mixing with Egyptians, and they came out Caucasian. This makes no sense to us, but we just read what the description of this nation was. Then they believe that these Caucasians, who somehow remain Caucasians after mixing with Egyptians, which we know are black because they painted themselves black, they believe that Caucasians did 400 years of slavery in Africa. There is no record of this. There's a reason you don't find a record of mass white slavery in Egypt painted on the walls. These same stupid people will tell you to go back to Africa and then argue with you when you point out that Egypt is in Africa and Israel kept being mistaken for Egyptians. Then they will try to convince you that black people were not in Africa. They were white. They were tanned Caucasians. This is what the Bible's talking about. They're incoherent, unable to put together the facts. They're void of understanding, unwise. Then they will tell you, well, these people look Middle Eastern. These people look Middle Eastern. What does that even mean? Because there are dark people, black people with afros that still live in the Middle East now. We know that they lived in the Middle East in the past because all the Explorer journals explained what these people look like. They described them as having dark skin, kinky hair. This is all throughout the journals. And yet they will read about Greek and Roman invasions. They will read about the rapes and the intermixing. And to them, it just doesn't make sense how people could now be lighter than they were in the past after the Greeks and Romans invaded. They have no sense of putting the evidence together. That's why they can see people get murdered on camera, unarmed black people get murdered on camera. And they will say, well, the officer feared for his life. The officer didn't have a choice. Well, you don't know what kind of pressure they're under. They say stuff like this. What did it say? Let me go back real quick. I just want to. No perception of ethical and religious claims. Ethical. Where's the part? Let me go back here. Let me see. I wanted to find the part about morals. Anyway, there it is right here. Implying probably a moral defect. Right here. They have a moral defect when you can see somebody get murdered on camera and they're unarmed. And in your mind, there's some kind of justification for that murder. Just because the person went and filled out a job application and got hired as an officer. But remember, the Most High has no respect of persons. They're going to be judged on Judgment Day, just like everybody else. That I'm just following orders or I feared for my life. That's not going to fly. You can't trick God. But these people have a moral flaw. They don't understand that the aftermath of 400 years of slavery and Jim Crow have a negative effect financially and economically on people. Understand that Jim Crow just ended in 1964. So since 1964, it's been 56 years. They expect black people to have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps in 56 years. Some of you living right now are older than 56 years old. And they expect in the lifetime of one person for us to become equal to where they are when they've had a 350-year head start using slave labor, where they didn't have to pay employees. They didn't have to go register with state governments and file paperwork. They didn't have to come up with first and last month's rents and deposits to the power company and all this other stuff to build their empires. If a slave invented something, they stole that invention, patented that invention, made millions, and continued to pass it on to their kids. And they don't understand how that affects the economy. They don't understand how that economically impacts black people. And they expect in 56 years, we should be able to be equal with them financially when they've had a 350-year head start. They're unable to comprehend the simple things. Modern slavery. And when I say modern slavery, I'm talking about the current judicial system that mass incarcerates black people at 8 times the rate of anybody else. They don't see that as slavery right in front of their face. They don't understand that the prison lending programs are still the same slave trading programs that they had back during slavery. The laws that they use to catch people, for example, license and registration. Back in slavery times, if you were a slave and you were out, you had to produce your paperwork to prove you had permission to be out without supervision. You had to have your license or registration, basically. And you get stopped by the slave patrols, which are now the police officers. And then the plantations became the prisons. And yet people will read their Bible and they still don't comprehend what's going on. That slavery never ended. You're going to say that we weren't enslaved for 400 years in this country? Yes. Our people are still being enslaved in this country. Slavery didn't end in this country. The 13th Amendment, it makes it legal to make somebody a slave as long as you convict them of a crime first. But most of Eurocentric Christianity won't acknowledge that. They don't pay any attention to that because they have a moral defect. Again, white Jews. We know it's ridiculous to believe white people were slaves in Africa for 400 years doing hard back-breaking work when they can lay out in the sun for 45 minutes too long and then they can barely move because they're bright red like an apple and have burnt their skin off. We know this makes no sense. And yet they still want to force on us the idea of white Jews. But wait, what makes the idea of white Jews so stupid? Not only that part, but they call themselves the Ashkenazi. And all you have to do is read Genesis chapter 10 and see that Ashkenaz is a descendant of Japheth. The word Ashkenaz means Germany. Their own people, Arthur Kessler, and not just Kessler, as recent as 2014, which I show you in the Lying Spirits video, DNA tests prove that they are from Europe. Everything is pointing to Europe, saying these people are European, these people are European. And they're like, oh, we don't understand how you could think they're European. We don't understand how you can think they're not Jews. And then they say we're racist, and we as in Israelites, they say we're racist for pointing out Revelation chapter 2:9 and Revelation chapter 3:9 that talks about fake Jews. The church doesn't want to talk about the fake Jews. They want to skip over those verses and talk about the church of Philadelphia and Thyatira and Ephesus. They want to talk about the churches. They don't want to talk about the fake Jews or the Nicolaitans. This is why the Bible tells us he's going to send a nation full of stupid people to make us mad. We're going to live in an idiocracy, which is the movie cover I just showed you a second ago. If you haven't seen that movie, watch that movie. And then white Jesus. White Jesus is perhaps the most insulting, I guess, after the white Jews. It says he has hair like wool and he had feet and arms the color of bronze. Not just in the book of Revelation, but Daniel says it too. So when people say, well, that's Christ after he was resurrected. Well, explain Daniel. Why does Daniel give the same description? I know you're not going to tell me he was resurrected in Daniel. Why does Isaiah and Ezekiel see bronze beings around the throne? Daniel runs into another bronze man as well. Like, it's bronze beings all over the Bible. And we know what color bronze is. We can look at bronze and see what color bronze is, and they will look and try to figure out a way to explain away the color bronze to you, to tell you bronze does not look like black people, but looks more like a person who's olive or Middle Eastern or brown skin. And again, saying Middle Eastern shows you the complete ignorance of the makeup of the Middle East when you have dark black people in the Middle East and not just the brown light skinned people they show you on TV. I posted a video a while back when I did ministerfortson.com of an Egyptian talking, and he was telling the history and how Egypt was black. And people had the nerve to tell me he didn't know Egyptian history, even though he was an Egyptian. Egyptians weren't black. This is the kind of stupid stuff we have to deal with. And we have mountains of evidence, 17 hours of evidence put together by myself and Teo in Evidence Unleashed. And there are people still saying, well, I don't care how much evidence you have. That doesn't make sense. And it's infuriating because that's part of the curse is God was going to provoke us to anger with a nation of stupid people because our ancestors started doing stupid stuff like worshiping false gods, things that had no power, and they provoked him to anger. So part of the curse was God was going to send a plague of stupid people among us to make us mad, which I laughed so hard like during this study. But yeah, the plague of stupid people. And we often overlook that. And people say it's mean to call people stupid. I'm not calling them stupid. I showed you in the Greek, they called them stupid. In the Hebrew, they called them stupid. And I'm showing you a list of stupid things that they can't comprehend, simple things that they can't comprehend. And again, not all of them, because some of them see the truth. Some of them see the truth and some of them are on board with the truth. So I'm not talking about all of them. Now, again, I'm just pointing to examples that we could tie to modern day. So let's look at Romans 11, because Paul is going to tell us who these people are that he's talking to. Because remember, Romans 10 is where we just came from. So in Romans 11, Paul is still talking to the same people. And Paul is going to tell you, and he's going to reiterate his agenda. Romans 11, 7 through 14. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. According as it is written, God hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, ears that they should not hear, and unto this day. So let me read that again. Eyes that they should not see and ears that they should not hear unto this day. So some of Israel can see, others of Israel are still blinded. That's why you still have people trying to keep the law to earn salvation. People are saying we need to keep the law. We need to keep the law. We're not under grace. They are still blinded. We're going to come back to that. And David saith, let their table be made a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. Let their eyes be darkened that they may not see, and bow down their back always. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles for to provoke them to jealousy. So salvation has come to the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy. To provoke who? Israel. He's not talking about the northern kingdom. Salvation isn't come to the northern kingdom. That's not what he's referring to. Salvation has come to the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy. How do I know he's not talking about the northern kingdom? Because listen to what he says. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, not Israel, not the northern kingdom, but the world, and the diminishing of them, the riches of the Gentile, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. If by any means, he's saying by any means necessary. Don't that sound like Malcolm X? If by any means I may provoke them to emulation, them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. Paul is telling you his agenda. He started out saying his agenda was to save Israel. And here again, he says, I'm using any means necessary to provoke my flesh into salvation. Those of his flesh. Those are Israelites, whether they're northern kingdom or southern kingdom. It doesn't matter. Political differences doesn't change your flesh or DNA or physical relation. Again, your political reasons for splitting don't change your physical or DNA relation. So Paul is talking to the people who are of his flesh, and he's talking to Gentiles, which tells you he's not talking to the people in the northern kingdom. He's talking to a different people who he defines as a stupid people, the Gentiles, in order so the people of his flesh, the Israelites, might be saved. So understand, Paul doesn't contradict the Old Testament or the New Testament, the words of Christ or any of that stuff. And we're going to see that when I put out the study on Paul, because if you throw out Paul, then you got to throw out Peter. And if you throw out Peter, you got to start throwing out other books. But I'll show you that when we get back to it. So for those of you who want to win the mystery box contest, you have to get active on the forum. The 25 most active users will be chosen, and out of those 25, I will draw 3, and they will win a mystery box full of stuff. And if you want to know what's in that box, you either have to be a winner or hope one of the winners makes a video for you. For those of you who support via Patreon, Cash App, PayPal, or Super Chat, you will get 15 bonus points for the contest, and you can post there in the BHITB forums at bhitbforums.com, or go to blackhistoryinthebible.com and click the BHITB forums tab. So get the thumbs up, please, for those of you who enjoyed the video. Next study, in part 2, I'm going to get into the ethnos. I'm going to break down the words. I'm going to talk about whether or not they're the northern kingdom, whether they're the descendants of Japheth, the Gentiles, aka the Europeans. We're going to talk about whether they're all non-believers outside of Israel. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you click the subscribe button, and make sure you click the notification bell and click all notifications so that you don't miss anything that's coming up. I got a ton of studies coming out for Black History Month. Several are ready to go. So don't be surprised if you guys start getting 2 studies a week, possibly. I don't want to commit to that, but there's a good chance you'll get 2 studies a week. So anyway, with that said, until next time, I'm out.